You know, every great business starts with a plan, a mission, a fantastic idea. But behind all of that, there's a kind of secret document, a set of rules that quietly governs, well, everything. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on corporate bylaws.
So let me ask you this. What's the single most important business document that you've probably never even read? And hey, if you're thinking it's the business plan or the marketing strategy, think again. We are talking about the internal rulebook that can literally make or break a company when things get complicated.
And that rule book, well, those are the bylaws. To put it simply, they are the internal set of rules that define the entire organizational and operational structure of a corporation. You can think of them as the DNA of corporate governance.
Okay, so let's get into it. First, we're going to break down what this corporate rulebook really is and why it's so critical for preventing total chaos. Then, we'll dissect its anatomy to figure out who the key players are. We'll even look at a super high-stakes corporate battle where these rules became the main weapon. And finally, we'll see why this document is actually designed to evolve.
The best way to think about bylaws is as your company's internal constitution. I mean, if the Articles of Incorporation are like the company's birth certificate, then the bylaws are the operating system, the OS, that runs the entire program, telling all the different parts how they're supposed to work together. So why is this rulebook so essential? Well, because without clear rules, disputes are almost guaranteed. Bylaws aren't just some legal boilerplate. They are, and I'm not kidding, like the prenuptial agreement for your business partners. They define the terms of the relationship before things can get messy and stop corporate chaos before it can even get started.
And their scope is wow, it's vast. They specify everything from the authority of directors and officers to the exact procedures for how to run a meeting. They even dictate how special committees are formed, how stock gets transferred, and how the company's official records are supposed to be kept. It's the complete blueprint for how the corporation functions.
So, who are the key players in this whole system? Let's dive into the anatomy of the bylaws to see how they define power and responsibility. This is where the rules on paper meet the real people who have to live by them.
It really boils down to three core groups. First, you've got the shareholders. They're the owners. Then there's the board of directors. They're the governors, elected by those owners. And finally, you have the officers, the managers who are running the day-to-day operations.
All right, first up, the shareholders. As the true owners of the corporation, the bylaws exist in large part to protect their rights and their interests. The bylaws grant them some very specific and really important powers. Shareholders, for instance, get to elect the board of directors, which usually happens at an annual meeting. They also get to vote on major business decisions, they have the right to call for special meetings, and they can inspect the company's books to make sure everything's above board. And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. The actual language in the bylaws, like what you see here from Article 2, lays out all of those powers in very dense, very specific legal detail. It covers everything, from meeting notices to the exact number of votes needed for a decision, what's called a quorum. Okay, so if the shareholders are the owners, who do they elect to govern on their behalf? Well, that brings us right to the board of directors. This is the group that's responsible for overseeing the corporation and, really, for protecting the shareholders' interests. Their role is absolutely central. The bylaws empower them to manage the overall business and affairs of the company. They're elected every year, and they have the power to fill any empty seats on the board and, maybe most importantly, to appoint the corporate officers who will actually manage the company. And the source of their power is spelled out, plain as day. A simple but incredibly powerful statement right in Article 3 declares that the business will be managed by its board of directors. It's that one line, right there in the bylaws, that makes their authority official. And who actually executes the board's vision? That is where the officers come in. These are the people on the ground, the CEO, the CFO, the secretary, and they're all appointed by the board to run the business day to day. And, the bylaws get incredibly specific about what they have to do. The president or CEO has general supervision of the business, the secretary is in charge of all the corporate records and taking minutes at meetings, and the treasurer or CFO handles all the financial books and transactions. This clear division of labor is absolutely essential. You see, this clear chain of command isn't just a suggestion, it is a hard and fast rule. Article 4 of the bylaws meticulously details the responsibilities for each officer. This makes sure there's zero ambiguity about who is accountable for what. So bylaws create order. But what happens when that order is challenged? Let's look at a really high-stakes example where the bylaws themselves become a weapon in a huge corporate battle. We're talking about something called a poison pill. It sounds dramatic, right? And it absolutely is. It's a strategy that companies use to defend themselves against a hostile takeover. Essentially, a poison pill is a tactic that makes a company's stock way less attractive to a potential buyer. A common way it works is by allowing existing shareholders to buy a ton of new shares at a huge discount. This floods the market with new stock and dilutes the ownership of the hostile party, making the takeover way too expensive. And this is exactly where the bylaws come in. As this quote explains, shareholders have actually fought back by trying to change the bylaws themselves. They've proposed these shareholder rights bylaws that would force a board to get rid of a poison pill. In effect, it's a power struggle played out through amendments to the corporate rulebook. This whole battle brings us to a really critical point about bylaws. They are not meant to be carved in stone. They're a living document, one that's designed to adapt and evolve as a company grows and faces new challenges. And what's really crucial here is that the power to change these rules isn't held by just one group. Typically, both the shareholders, the owners, and the directors, the governors, have the power to adopt, amend, or appeal them. This creates this vital system of checks and balances right at the heart of the company's constitution.
Which leaves us with a final question. A business plan tells you where you want to go, but the bylaws, they're the rulebook that dictates how you're going to get there, especially when the pressure is on and tough decisions have to be made. So, what rules are guiding your venture?